Hello everyone and welcome back to the YouTube channel. My name is Rhoda Olabisi. If you're here for the first time, I would need you to smash that subscribe button, okay? It really helps my channel to grow. So today I'm going to walk you through the application process and the timeline for the PwC Graduate Trainee Program. Now, you may want to get a paper and a biro because I'm going to go into important details and you may need to put down a thing or two. So the first things first, applications for the PwC Graduate Trainee Program or the Graduate Recruitment Program will be opened on the 14th of March 2023 and the application will be open to the 20th of March 2023. So you have just a week to submit your application. So after you submitted your application online, you're going to get an email that will shortlist you for an assessment test. So for the assessment test, it's divided into two. We have the verbal and numerical reasoning test, then we have the personality test, right? The assessment test is going to be between 11th and 17th of April, right? So usually when you get the email that shortlisted you for the assessment test, what you get is divided into two. We have the verbal and the numerical reasoning test, then we have the personality test as well. Now, what they did last year was you have 3 days to complete these two different stages. So for the verbal and the numerical reasoning test last year, when you get the email, they'll tell you that you have to complete the test between the 7th and 10th of March. So I'm assuming that this year also you get a couple of days for you to complete that test. That does not mean that you can start on one day and end the other day. What they're telling you is that you have 3 days. Whichever date that is convenient for you, you can take one of those days and then take the test, right? So last year they had 3 days scheduled each for those tests. They had the verbal and numerical test between 7th and 10th of March, and they had the personality test between the 21st and the 23rd of March. So I'm assuming that this year they're going to probably maintain that same schedule of having 3 days each. So for this year's recruitment timeline, they've assigned 11th to the 17th of April for this assessment test, which means you have to complete your verbal and numerical reasoning test and your personality test between the 11th and 17th of April. Now, how they will schedule those dates will be down to them, and then you see that in the email. So now let's go into the test proper. For the numerical and the verbal reasoning test, it is SHL based as opposed to KPMG that we have GMAT based questions, right? PwC, the aptitude tests are SHL based. Now, what that means is that there are particular patterns, and that's the good thing about this aptitude test. All you need to know is the type of aptitude test it is, and then you can go and practice because there are already established structures that this test takes. So now for your SHL based questions, you know that okay, there's a particular pattern it takes. So for example, the comprehension passage that you see in an SHL test will be different from what you see in a GMAT test, right? In an SHL based comprehension passage, for example, what you would see is 3 options. You see yes, no, or not applicable. You pick not applicable in instances where the answer to the question is not expressly stated in the passage. But in GMAT, the comprehension passage is totally different from what you see in the SHL test. So now that you know that PwC uses an SHL based aptitude test, you know that there are established structure to the way you answer their question or to the way their questions are asked. What you have to do is just go online and practice a lot of SHL aptitude tests. Understand the structure of the questions and understand the logic behind answering those type of questions. So now for the behavioral test, it's also SHL based. Something that is also very important for you to note in terms of the SHL behavioral test is that your answers have to be consistent over time, right? So let's say for example, they ask you a question that, are you a good girl? You said yes. The second question, they ask you, are you an excellent or a good girl? Even though the excellent option will be probably a better answer, but remember that you've already selected that you're a good girl in your question 1. So your question 2, you have to maintain the answer. So if they're asking you other questions, but the options that you are getting are better, or the other options that you see you think describes you better, just make sure that your answers are consistent. At the end of the day, it's a personality test, right? They want to be able to determine all your personality, but if your answers are not consistent, then that's going to be an issue, right? So just make sure that the answers that you are giving is consistent in your behavioral SHL test, not the verbal and numerical reasoning test, right? The behavioral one, the personality test, make sure that your answers are consistent. That's very, very important. It's not something quantitative that you're supposed to pass. It's a qualitative test, right? They want to be able to determine certain things about your personality. So make sure that your answers are consistent. So if you pass your numerical and verbal reasoning test as well as your behavioral or your personality test, you'll be shortlisted for the next stage, which is the panels interview. So for the panels interview, it is going to be between the 8th and the 19th of May 2023. So bear in mind that if you pass your aptitude test, your panels interview is going to fall anytime between the 8th and the 19th of May. Now for your panels interview, as you can hear, panels, so that means that you have more than one person interviewing you, right? So you have about 2 to 3 people, and you have people who are senior managers, or someone from HR, right? They are going to be interviewing you. So now for the panels interview, they will ask you situational based questions. That's always a given. You just know that scenario based questions are always going to come out in your interview. When I made the video about PwC Graduate Trainee Program, I'm going to link the video up here so you can go and watch it. I explained how I go about answering situational based questions. I said I use the CAR approach, which is the context, the action, and the results. Describe the context. Say when I was doing my internship at XYZ company in 2019, there was a time when I had a conflicting idea with a team member. The context, right? The second one is the action. Then you talk about what you did to actually resolve that conflict, right? The last one is the results. You talk about what happened or what solution that was arrived at as a result of the action that you've taken, right? So that is the approach that I personally use to answer scenario or situational based questions, right? Because you cannot escape them. So what you can do is learn how to answer them. I feel like they're very simple. Just always practice. Go online, search for situational based questions, scenario based questions. You see a lot of them online, and always have a method of answering them. There are different methods. I use the CAR method because it's easier for me. Other people use the STAR method, which is STAR. It's also an abbreviation for, I think, situation, task, action, and results. And apart from the situational based question, they'll ask you about what is happening around. It could be something happening in Nigeria or something happening abroad. So right now is the election period. They could ask you what happened during the presidential election. They could ask you who won presidential election. They could ask you why was the senatorial election moved. Just literally know what is happening around you during the time of your interview, both nationally and globally as well, because they will ask you questions surrounding things like that. If you pass your partner's interview, you are going to get your offer letter between the 22nd of May and the 2nd of June, and you'll be required to resume on the 3rd of July 2023. So that's basically the application process for PwC's Graduate Trainee Program. So let me go over it once again, just a recap. The first thing is, after you've submitted your application online, you'll be required to take aptitude test. Now the aptitude test is divided into 2. We have the numerical and verbal reasoning test here, and then we have the personality test here. The numerical and verbal reasoning test and the behavioral test will be between the 11th and the 17th of April 2023. Now if you've passed that, you'll be shortlisted for a panels interview, and that's going to be between the 8th and the 19th of May 2023. Now if you pass your panels interview, you're going to get your offer letter between the 22nd of May and the 2nd of June, set to resume on the 3rd of July 2023. So that's just a short recap of the application process and the application timeline as well. Just make sure you're practicing for your aptitude test and for your panels interview. Make sure you practice your behavioral test questions as well. So that has brought us to the end of today's video. Do not forget to smash that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up.